everyone. I am Surya Rajshri. Welcome to online classes. So, in this session, we will be learning about the most important structure that is present in all the living organisms, which is nothing but the cell. Okay, we shall learn about its structure, what are the different components that are present inside the cell, and what are its function, what about the different sizes of the cell, etc. in this classes. Fine. Now, getting into our main session today, cell and its discovery. So, first of all, who discovered this cell? There was a scientist called as Robert Hooke. Okay, so Robert Hooke was examining different kinds of things under a microscope. Once, by chance, he got the cork cells. Okay, so you might have observed the bark of the tree. Okay, that is called as the cork. Okay, so he took those cork cells under the microscope one fine day, and then he got to see these kind of structures, just like compartments. Okay, so like rooms we can tell, or we can tell the compartments that are present in the honeycomb, or it looks like bricks that are required for building any kind of house or any kind of building for that matter, right? So these cells looked like same to him, right? Therefore he coined the term cell in the language Latin, which means compartments. Okay, so Robert Hooke was the person who discovered and coined the term cells. Okay, now coming on to the definition of the cell. Cell is a basic, structural and functional unit of all the living organisms. Fine. Now, why it is called as basic? It is called as basic because organisms are built only because of the cells. For example, if we take any kind of building, if we have to start constructing it, we require raw material, which is nothing but brick, right? So once we layer the brick one above the other, the building rises. Similarly, the organisms, the body is made up of small structures called as cells, which just simulates the activity of the bricks in case of the buildings. Okay, right. Now therefore they are called as basic unit. They are also called as structural unit because they provide proper shape to the living body. Fine. And it is called as a functional unit because if any of the living organism has to survive, it should undergo digestion, respiration, etc. and etc. They are called life processes, right? So if they all have to undergo, it should have proper systems in the body, right? All those things, all those functions, metabolic activities or physical activities, everything will take place with the help of these cells only. Fine. Therefore, they can be defined as the basic, structural and functional unit of all the living organisms. Fine. Now, these cells, are they visible through our naked eyes? No, they are definitely not visible through our naked eyes. Therefore, they must be visualized by using special instruments such as microscope. Okay. Now, getting into the variations in kinds in the cells. Okay, the cells may vary in their number. They can vary with the help of the shape. They can also vary in terms of size. Okay, let us understand these first before entering into our actual functions and structure of a cell. Okay, now coming on to the number of the cell. Fine. In our environment, we can find different organisms. Fine. It may be small bacteria, viruses and big creatures like elephants. We can also find human beings, right? So these are all varying in the number of cells. Okay, so based on the presence of cells, they can be classified into unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. The word uni itself tells one, fine. So they have, these organisms will have only one cell in their body. So they are called as unicellular organisms, and that one cell is enough to control all the activities, is enough to perform all the activities that are required for the survival of that organisms, fine. So such kind of organisms are called as unicellular organisms. So for example, amoeba, paramecium, euglena, bacteria, yeast, all these comes under unicellular organisms. Now coming on to multicellular organisms, the word again tells you multi means many, numerous, right? So human beings and this tigers, lions, cheetahs, everything, right? They all fall under the category of multicellular organisms. Okay, so here group of cells are required to perform the activities, whereas in unicellular organisms all the activities are performed by one cell only, right? For example, respiration, it also takes place in that same cell. Reproduction takes place in the same cell, like that. Okay, but in multicellular organisms we have specialized mechanisms for each and every activity, fine. Now getting into the next, called as the shape of the cell, fine. Shape of the cell, we have seen many cells with different structures. We have not seen cells, actually we have seen organisms with different shapes, right? Probably a plant will have different shape, human beings have different structure. Each one of us in the human being category will vary in our body nature, body structure, and similarly amoeba varies from euglena, like this, right? But amoeba has got one speciality, that it doesn't have a proper shape at all. It is pleomorphic in nature because it doesn't assume any shape, right? But they have small projections called as a pseudopodia, like this, right? They are small projections out from their body called a pseudopodia, fine. So similarly, the cells may be very long, as in the case of neuron, they are elongated in their shape. The cells can be round or spherical in shape, like in case of ovum, or in case of RBCs, like this, right? In case of bacteria, there may be rod shape, they may be spiral shape, any of the shape they can assume, fine. So it doesn't actually depend upon any factor, but it is an organism as such, fine. So coming on to size of the cell. Size of the cell also varies from one organism to another. There might be biggest cells, as in the case of ostrich egg cells, which is there in the picture, and there might be small tiny cells, like in the case of bacteria. Bacteria is the smallest cell available on the earth, and the ostrich egg cell is the biggest cell available in the earth, okay, on the earth, fine. So this is about the size of the cell. Again, in human beings we have different sizes, like in case of neurons are very long in nature, right? So it depends upon the organism, fine. Now getting into the actual cell structure, fine. So before getting into the cell structure, we shall understand a term called as tissues. Okay, now we have been telling multicellular organisms, right? So what happens there? Many cells will be present. Okay, these many cells which are of similar type will form a category called as tissue. Okay, group of tissues again will form organ. Many organs together will form organ system, and an organ system, many organ systems together forms an organism, right? Now let us understand a small topic, that the organ system, for that matter organism itself, is made up of one tiny unit called as cell. Okay, now we understood what is the definition of the cell in our previous slide. Now we shall understand what is tissue. Tissue is a group of cells. What kind of cells? They are all of similar cells. Okay, all the cells are of same kind. Fine. So similar cells performing a specific activity. They are all grouped for what? They are all grouped together to perform one single activity. Fine. So such kind of mass of cells having similar function is called as tissue. Okay. Now we shall see what are the different parts of the cell. Okay, cell will have certain basic components. All the cell must have this. Okay, so those basic components include the cell membrane, cytoplasm, and the nucleus. Okay, these are the main components of any kind of cell. Fine. Now coming on to the cell membrane and the cell wall. Fine. Now we told cell membrane is one of the basic component. Okay, so all the cells will be lined with the cell membrane. This in this figure you can see a plant cell. Okay, so plant cell, the arrow mark here, can you see arrow mark over there? Right, so that indicates the cell membrane. That is, it is forming the outline, outermost structure of a cell is called as cell membrane. Fine. Now in case of animals it is the outermost structure, whereas in case of the plants it becomes the second layer, because the outer layer, can you see this thick layer? So that is called as cell wall. Okay, in plant cells the cell wall is the outermost structure, whereas in animal cells the cell membrane is the outermost structure. So fine, because of its location you can make out what is the function of it. Fine. So since it is present as the outermost layer, it obviously helps in protection. It gives the shape for the organism, right, for the cell. Okay, and then it also helps in the movement of particles from inside and outside of the cell. Therefore it is called as semi-permeable membrane. Semi means not completely. Fine, it is partial. Okay, it does not allow all the particles to get into it, right? So it selects a certain kind of molecules, only they can get into the cell and they can exit out of the cell. So that is the speciality. Another speciality of the plasma membrane is they help in separating one cell from the other cell. It is very much required, right? So these are all the functions of the cell membrane. Now getting into the next topic called as the cell wall. As we told, cell wall is the outermost structure in case of plant cells. Fine. In case of plant cells, here in this you can see, right? So in case of plant cells only, they are outermost structure and they are present only in the plant cell. Fine. In this picture also you can see the cell wall. Okay, so these cell walls are non-living structures. Okay, so they provide protection because the plants will not move from one place to another like how we move. They do not show locomotion, right? So in order to prevent them from extreme temperatures, then humidity, moisture and atmospheric conditions, it should have some protecting coat for it, right? So cell wall acts like a coat for them. Fine. Now that is the speciality of the cell wall. Fine. Now coming into the cytoplasm, if you can see this cell, it has got a jelly material in it, right? That is called as the cytoplasm. Cyto means cell, plasm is jelly like material. It is semi-fluid substance. Okay, so inside this cytoplasm only various cell organelles will be present. You can see mitochondria, Golgi complex, you can see endoplasmic reticulum, then you can see lysosomes, ribosomes. All these cell organelles are suspended within the cytoplasm. Fine, that is the speciality of the cytoplasm. Fine. Now getting into the next important structure of all the cells, which is called as master of a cell, or you can call it as brain of the cell. Fine, it is nucleus. Fine. Nucleus is a cell organelle because it is bounded by the membrane. It'll have its own membrane called as nuclear membrane. How many membranes are there here? Two membranes. So nuclear membrane has got two layers: outer nuclear membrane, inner nuclear membrane. Is it continuous over there? No, it is not. It has got small gaps in between, right? They are called as nuclear pores. They are available for moving the materials, for the transportation of the materials inward and outward of the nucleus. Okay, now inside the nuclear membrane, it also consists of this jelly like material called as nucleoplasm. Okay, like how we have cytoplasm, that is the jelly like material within the cell, we have jelly like material within the nucleus called as nucleoplasm. Okay, inside the nucleoplasm we have this thread like structures. If you can see in the picture, we have red thread like structures, right? So they are called as chromatin. So chromatin is a hereditary material, what we call as DNA, which is responsible for transferring the characters from one generation to another generation. So that is only because of this chromatin material. Fine. The nucleus has also got another region called as nucleolus. This is a darkly stained region called as nucleolus. Nucleolus helps in the formation or synthesis of RNA. Okay, so RNA in turn is required for the synthesis of proteins. Okay, but RNA is produced from the nucleus. Coming on to its function, nucleus is very much important for all the cells because it acts as the brain of the cell. It helps in governing all the functions, all the activities of a cell. Fine. So let us understand about the other cell organelles in our next session. Thank you.